What do you do when the path you thought you'd follow forever suddenly stops making sense? In today's episode, you'll hear how Annette Mashi walked away from a corporate career, lasted just 6 days as a teacher, and ultimately built a thriving business by owning her strengths and helping others do the same. If you've ever questioned your direction, struggled to market yourself, or wondered how to attract clients who get you, this conversation is packed with insight, strategy, and a whole lot of heart. So stick around. Hey there, welcome back to Crescendo, a podcast about what it really takes to build a profitable, sustainable business that you love. I'm Rachel Lipchansky, business strategist, mentor, and your go-to girl for building a business that's aligned with your values and your vision. I started my first business at 25, built it from the ground up, and sold it 5 years later. Since then, I've made it my mission to help women grow businesses that reflect who they are and what matters most. I created this show because I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed and to second guess every move, and I don't want you to do this alone. Each week, you'll get practical strategies, mindset shifts, and real life lessons from my journey, as well as from fellow business owners and guest experts. We're sharing real talk and customizable support to help you thrive with no fluff and no formulas. If you're a solopreneur, freelancer, or small business owner ready to grow your revenue, confidence, and impact in a way that feels true to who you are in the right place. Let's get to it. Hi, Annette. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rachel. It is so fun to be here.
I am delighted to have you and to be getting into this conversation. I love anytime I get to chat with you. So
Right
this is
back
going to
at
be
you.
so fun. Thank you. Okay. I would love for you just to start by sharing a little bit about yourself and your business.
So my name's Annette, and I create magic with words. I am a copywriter, a content strategist for creative female business coaches, consultants, and design professionals. I highlight their stories and talk about their superpowers because they don't want to, and they're a little bit embarrassed, and they need somebody else to step in and help them shine. And this way they can attract and convert the clients that they love.
It's so good. And it's such an important service because I know as a content creator how hard it is sometimes to create our own content and really get the messages that we're trying to convey out of our head into a written format. So I know this is super helpful to a lot of people out there. Okay, you left corporate 9 years ago. What was driving you at that time? Why did you step away from that kind of a career?
So I really did love my job at Intel, but what I realized was that nobody ever retires from there. Like I had done all the things that you're supposed to do. I had gotten good grades in high school, and gotten into a good college, studied very hard, went to the university, got a job, and I thought I would always be there. I thought I would be with the company like for the rest of my life. But what I noticed was that times were changing and people didn't stay at the companies that they were with. And the companies weren't keeping the people until retirement age. Nobody was leaving Intel with a gold watch or anything like that. And it was only a matter of time. And so I saw that as the waves of cost reduction would happen and they would get rid of employees, I knew it was just a matter of time before my number was up. And so when they offered me the opportunity to leave, I took it as an adventure. And I said, no, what the hell? And took a leap and took a leap.
Okay, yeah, it's always a huge leap when you are transitioning from one kind of a job or work environment to another. What did you think you'd be doing then at that time?
So when I left Intel, I was 100% sure that I was going to teach Israeli kids English. I said, this is my calling. I can really be of service to them. They don't know the language, and you absolutely have to have English in order to live in today's society, to get good jobs and to, work in the world and things like that. So I really, really, really wanted to teach them. I lasted 6 days, 3 days one week, 3 days the next week. I was crying in the bathroom and I said, this is not for me. And so it kind of rocked my world because not only had I left the security of a company and tried to step into another environment, but teaching was not it. And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do at the time. And I was really kind of crushed and moved, kind of crushed. kind of nervous, crushed, and just unsure of what my path was going to be.
Yeah. And anybody who has kids in the Israeli school system or has been a teacher in the system knows full well how difficult it is to teach. I don't know exactly what it is, why it is this way, but it is. So clearly not a reflection on you. Okay. So here you are. Teaching is a no.
And that's when I sat down and I tried to look at like what my strengths were, what had I done throughout the course of my life up until that point. And I realized that I had always been in some way, shape, or form working with words. I'd always been writing. I had my first experience with like creating magic with words was way back when my 16-year-old sister, I was 20 at the time. My 16-year-old sister wanted to get her a job and she had nothing to write on her resume because when you're a high school kid, you don't do anything and there's nothing to write on your resume. So I gave her a job title of beverage coordinator. And beverage coordinator was what she really did was she worked at McDonald's and you asked people if they wanted Coke, Sprite, or orange soda. So I used the words to embellish it. When I was at Intel, I did the same sort of thing. Every year they do employee reviews and I would take the employees and I would rewrite their reviews. So it wasn't I did this and I did that, but they analyzed, they implemented, they documented, they streamlined so that the words made them sound so much more important. I had always been doing some sort of documentation for them, always written presentations for them. So writing kind of jumped out as I can write and I can use words and I can make them into something. And I figured there could be some sort of career out of that or some sort of entrepreneurship out of that. I never sat down and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I just said, I can't work for a big company anymore. And I can't be teaching because that's not successful. I even tried teaching adults that they're worse than the kids, if you can believe that.
I imagine that's like a whole nother episode we could.
For sure. And teaching adults English, all they want is the slang. Like they want the slang, but like the Israeli. Anyway, yeah. And so I left and I said, okay, well, I can write. And that's when I started looking at different opportunities for writing.
Okay. So I know that you work with architects and designers and other creatives and so forth. How did you get started in that?
So that's a great story. When I left Intel and left the school system, all of the 60s, I was trying to decide what to do. And I signed up to be part of the Momentum program, which is women from the United States and other countries coming to Israel and traveling around to learn about the city, to learn about the country, and to learn about Judaism. And I was the representative to kind of give them a perspective from somebody who lives in Israel. And I was with the Federation, Women from Lehigh Valley. They're our partner. They're our sister city from where I live. And a woman on the bus was a writer. And she said to me, hey, I'll write an article about my perspective. And then you write an article about your perspective of the trip. It worked out really well. She loved the way I wrote. And she knew that I had studied architecture when I was at Drexel. And that I'd gotten a degree in architecture. And when she decided to give up her job working with this one client, she called me and she said, hey, I think they'll be a great fit for you. They're a marketing company that teaches architects and interior designers how to market themselves. And so she passed the client to me and the rest is history.
I love that. Like when you're just in the right place at the right time, looking for that next opportunity, and boom, there it is.
There it is. Always. God
Okay.
works
Are
in
you still doing
mysterious
that kind
ways.
of writing today?
I am still writing for the Architect Marketing Institute. It's been 5 years that they've been a client of mine. I work for many of their mastermind architects and get my services. I started writing blogs and articles for them because it's really important to have that kind of content on your website to show your authority and kind of promote yourself as an expert by having those kind of articles. Plus, it's good for like search engine optimization. You want to drive people to your website because you get people to look at your website and then they can book calls with you and they can buy your stuff. So you always want to drive people to your website. But you also need, because there's so much content out there, you also need to be able to use those articles in other ways. So what I started doing was taking those articles, breaking them down into emails that the architects could then send out to their email list, and then breaking it down even further into LinkedIn posts that they could then post on social media. So you'll take one piece of content. It's really important to be able to repurpose your content. You can take one piece of content and use it in multiple ways, depending on the platform that you're using it on.
Yeah, this is great. Okay. That's like, if you're listening, that's a very practical content strategy right there. Create one long form piece of content, the blog, as Annette is saying, and then break it down, create an email from that, a LinkedIn post, right? You can just like keep breaking it down and utilizing it over and over. Okay. Before we get into more practical strategies, because I do want to talk about your expertise around attracting and converting clients, I want to hear a little bit more about your journey. You've been working with this core client now for the last 5 years. What has followed? How have you filled your business, and what has the journey looked like?
So when I first started working with them, I thought, oh, great. Architects need to, they know they need to market themselves. This is wonderful. This is one company. They might have a handful of architects that I'm working with, but there are many, many, many more architects out there in the real world. So I can work with all of, I can find additional clients. And I did. And I tried. I really tried. I sent out cold emails to them and tried again and again and again. But what happened is I realized that they don't necessarily know that they need to market themselves. Just because the people in the program, the architects in the program knew that they needed to market themselves. But generally, people don't always know, business owners don't always know that they need to market themselves. And so it became a double sell. Would have to teach these architects and interior designers that they needed to market themselves, and then teach them or sell them my services. And so it was really draining because you're doing the education and then educating why they need you as this specific person that can service them.
Yeah, it's like a double sale.
It was a double sale, and it was really time consuming, and it just wasn't working. And it wasn't like I tried for 1 month and said, okay, it doesn't work and move on. You have to keep at this for a certain period of time. I remember that as we worked together, we set a deadline. Like, how long am I going to be sending out these cold pitches to these architects? And what's the volume of cold pitches? Sending 2 is not enough to be able to make a decision. So a lot of times when you're in business and you're trying to make a decision, if you should continue what you're doing or stop, you have to give it enough time. And you have to collect the data that goes behind it. So I could see how many pitches I had sent out. I could see how many responses I was getting. I could see how many people were jumping on calls with me and how many people could sell my services to. And so based on those decisions, I could see that my process wasn't working. What I was doing wasn't working. And that's when I decided, okay, let's pivot and do something else.
Yeah, I actually want to say something about those cold pitches, because I remember that this was a point of difference between us. This was a strategy that I guess somebody else had shared with you that might work. And I really respected your process. I really respected that you had in place these data points and that you were putting consistency and repetition behind the strategy. And I think that this is such an important piece, because one of the things is, when my clients come to work with me, I want to help them build a business that's going to work for them and that's going to resonate with who they are. And if you're somebody who is, one, comfortable making cold pitches, and two, ends up having success with that approach in one form or another, well, then that might be an okay strategy for you. I personally am not comfortable with cold pitches. I'm much more of a relationship-based person, which I know we're going to get into in our conversation here. But I really respected your process. So it's interesting to hear. Okay, so that you learned did not work for you.
Right. That was not working for me. It wasn't working. It was actually what I felt like was they didn't know that they needed it. And so I was trying to sell ice to Eskimos. It wasn't enough of a pain point for them to say, I'm going to hire you to solve my problem. And so even though, and it may have worked in the past, I mean, that strategy may have worked in the past, but it didn't necessarily work now. Now, what I'm doing is I'm looking more on LinkedIn. I can look on LinkedIn and I can comment on different coaches on their posts. And so they begin to see my name appear on their comments, and I can follow up that way if I'm consistently commenting on the things that they're doing. And, you know, there's more of a strategy from the LinkedIn direct messaging perspective. I'm still tracking and I'm still, keeping, being consistent about it, so that it's not like I do it 1 month and then I don't do it for 3 months. I mean, I'm consistently commenting on the same post, the same women's posts, so that they can always see my name popping up. And then they begin to look at my profile. And it's a different strategy for looking and finding clients.
Absolutely. Okay. So 5 years ago, you landed this core client. You've tried a bunch of different strategies to figure out what's going to work to talking to them. And then you also changed your market.
Mhm.
How did that come to be? You're
So
like,
I,
okay, no.
yeah. Okay. Now, sorry. So yeah, I tried the architects and interior designers, love them, still work with them. It's my comfort zone. But I also realized that if they don't need the product or they don't need as much marketing, they don't need my services. Also, strategically thinking, if I can write one blog a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks in a month, that kind of caps me out on exactly what I can deliver and exactly what I can provide. So it's also thinking of the business model, what you have. But I saw that the architects weren't really getting me to where I wanted to go. And so I took a look and figured out, okay, so what do I like to write about? And I really like to write about business. I really like to write about mindset. I like to write about strategy. I'm very logical. I'm creative, but I'm really logical. And so it was hard for me to like branch out to something else. And that's why I decided on the business end of coaching. I mean, there's other coaches. There are energy healers. There are yoga instructors. There are like all that, ooh, I'm going to, wave sage around your house and everything's going to be all better. It doesn't connect with me. I don't really know a lot about it. Health and wellness, not my thing. Yeah, okay. I get up in the morning and I ride my bicycle for exercise, but that's about like the extent of my health and wellness. So I looked at like what I liked and what I didn't like. And that's when I decided that who I wanted to write for. And I kind of niched down to the business coaches and consultants.
Awesome. Okay. So now I want to talk about your own strategy and give some very practical tips for our listeners in terms of how now you are attracting and converting clients. Now that you're clear about who you want to work with, who you don't want to work with, what resonates for them, and where they're hanging out.
Yeah. So I use LinkedIn as my primary platform. You can't be everywhere. I mean, it's just impossible on a one-woman show. I can't be everywhere and do everything. So I chose one platform that I really wanted to make my primary platform, which is LinkedIn. I might post on Instagram and Facebook, but just as a secondary platform. And I'm getting my message out, the message about what I do, who I do it for, trying to be really specific, concrete advice. This morning, I posted about how to write a good lead magnet, what a template would be to write for your freebie. So I'm out there showing my expertise, talking on podcasts so that my name gets out there. And most importantly, I'm networking. I'm joining groups where there's a lot of other women who are also in business that I can collaborate with and that can also help me grow my business by developing those relationships.
You're like a master networker. I love running into you at different events and seeing you in your brand blue, because I know you work with a very cool stylist here. Shout out to Jennifer. But no, I see you there. You're like bright and cheerful, and you are such a connector. You're so great about making introductions between people. What do you do with all those connections after you meet them? And how do you make sense of all the different people and actually make those relationships, like turn them into something that can be valuable for your business?
So first I have to tell you that I I used to hate it. When I worked at Intel, I never saw the value. I never understood that there was value in it. I didn't know why they had to take me away for a whole day to talk to people that I didn't want to talk to. Now, when I think about it, it just meant that I was in the wrong room, talking with the wrong people. So I want to be sure that when you network to be in the right room. So I know that I like to be in a room with other business women, mostly, if that's my clients, mostly business women, although it's nice to go to events where there's men as well. And it's important to be the connector, to work with people. As I get to know people, I get to know what they do. And so I can connect two people together. If I know that somebody is writing a book and I know somebody else is a book publisher, I want to make that connection so that they can talk and they can see if that's a good fit. So it's working and going from one room to the other, from one person to the other, knowing what they do, learning about them, listening. There's also something that I learned about the other day, like an accordion. Be an accordion. You're just give a little bit of information. Don't like word vomit on somebody. So when you go to these networking events, just give them a little bit of information. I can say I create magic with words. And they're like, oh, how do you do that? And then that opens up the conversation to something a little more. And so I'm not giving them my life story. I'm just giving them a little bit of information that's going to lead to more and more and more. Once you start going to these events, or you meet in the Zoom rooms, you get more comfortable with the people. You know what they do, you know what they like, you know who they are, and you ask them about their business. How's your business going? How was that retreat that you had last week? Was it great? Did you make good connections? Did the women love it? These are things that I'm interested. I'm not going into a networking room to get a client. I'm going into a networking room to make those connections. And when the client comes along, when my ideal client comes along and says to somebody, hey, do you know somebody that can do this? That's when one of my connections will step up and say, hey, yeah, Annette's great. And they'll recommend me. And that's what networking is all about. When I go to the room, when I'm in these networking rooms, you meet a lot of people. You don't have to connect with everybody. There's 200 people at a networking event. You don't need to connect with 200. Connect with 5 or 6 or 10, and then continue the connection with them. DM them on LinkedIn or send them an email and periodically check to see how they're doing. There's people that I met in networking meetings that could be strategic partners for me. Website designers. Clients go to website designers. They want a website. They go to a website designer. The website designer will say, hey, you need a copywriter. And they'll call me into the project. And so they're the type of connections that you want to make when you're going to networking events. And I try to, keep a list of everybody's names, jump on one-on-ones with them to develop those connections, learn more about their business, and then follow up in a month or 2 months.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing from you is like your secret sauce to attracting and converting clients is really twofold. It's creating those relationships that are going to lead to referrals from people who already know you, like you, trust you, believe in you, and think you do great work and are just somebody that they want in their corner. And then also creating this content strategy, right? It's putting yourself out there, putting your thought leadership out there. You're talking about primarily being on LinkedIn. Do you also have a blog or podcast?
So I don't have a podcast, but I guest on podcasts. Here I am today. So that's part of my strategy is to appear. I set a goal this year once a month to have one of my, one podcast episode drop, which is good to get my name out there. Other strategies is just connecting. It's connecting with people so that I know that I get referrals.
Awesome.
Do I have a blog? I write for like Her Nation. They have a magazine. So I write for the magazine on a regular basis. And I've been on the cover twice.
Oh,
so that's kind of
cover
fun.
lady.
Ooh, cover girl. Yeah, I know. Like Stand Aside, like Christy Brinkley. I mean, that's dating myself. There's probably somebody, I don't know. Gal Gadot, Stand Aside. Here I am,
I know.
cover
I'm
girl,
like, who are the current supermodels?
I have no
idea.
I don't know.
Could you have imagined 9 years ago that your entrepreneurial journey would look like it has?
No. I mean, because I never planned it. I think that just in the last couple of years, or maybe last year or so, I've really become intentional with what I want to do. I think that I'm kind of living my life like getting in the car, driving without like setting the GPS, knowing where I'm going. I mean, I've always felt like that. I had no idea, that was never my dream to like live in Israel. That was, wake up in the morning and say, hey, sounds like a good idea. Why don't we move? I really, had I thought about it, I probably wouldn't be here. But now that I'm here, I know that I can't be anywhere else. I mean, in the past, like in October 7th, I definitely feel like it can't be anywhere else. But was I in like sixth grade saying, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur? No, no, no. And I think that's really important, because I think that you have to be intentional about what you're doing. You have to kind of set plan in some way, shape, or form. But on the other hand, you can't wait. I can't wait until I have all the pieces put in place in order for me to go out there and meet new people, or take my business up a notch or anything. If you wait until it's perfect, it's never going to be perfect, and you'll never do anything.
Absolutely. And I think also too, like this idea of kind of floundering through all of it and figuring out what works and what doesn't is an important part of the process. A lot of times people will come to me and they'll say like, I'm not ready yet. I don't feel like I know who I want to serve well enough. I don't feel like I know exactly how I'm going to work with them. But what you're sharing in your journey is how, okay, you landed this first core client. And then after that client, it's really been some trial and error. And it's really been about putting yourself out there and seeing what's going to stick, not just with your clients, but also for you and the kind of lifestyle that you want to be living. So it's like on some level, not having a GPS at a certain stage of your business is actually sort of acceptable, because it kind of leads to all this unknown magic that can take place and lessons learned along the journey.
Yeah, I think that it's like, if I look back now, I'm glad that I didn't necessarily have a plan, because I probably wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't be able to take the risks, and I wouldn't be able to move forward. It's also having people that are there to support you, and a lot of other female business owners that say, hey, this is what I'm going through too. It's okay. And there's a lot of like solidarity behind that. And we can be vulnerable, and we can admit that things aren't working out, or I tried this and it didn't work, so let's try something else. And ask each other, what did you do? And how did that work for you? No business, there's no two businesses alike. Every business is unique. Every client is unique. But just because I wrote, one website copy doesn't mean that I can write 7 different website copies. They're different. It's not a copy paste. Each person's different, each business is different. And we have to be able to recognize that and move forward, and not wait for that perfection.
Absolutely. How do you think you've changed? How do you think
Sure.
your confidence, sense of self has evolved as you have gotten more comfortable in your business?
So I definitely feel a lot less scared to take those steps forward. A lot less scared to try and fail, because it's not really failing, it's learning. Everything is learning, everything is growth, everything is change. And so I feel more confident in being able to speak and know what I'm doing. It also comes from experience. I mean, it's not my first website copy that I'm writing. So I know what the homepage should look like. I know what the about page should look like. I know what should appear on the service page. So it's easier to be able to do it if you've done it all. I mean, it was scary the first time, but then there's people who have done it before you that you can look and see what they did, and then compare, and then move forward. So there's always somebody who's one step ahead of you that you can watch to see what they're doing. And then you gain the confidence by doing it yourself and putting it out there for people.
Yeah, and showing up for the people who are several steps behind you and just
I love
looking
doing
to
that.
move forward as well.
And
Yeah.
I love helping the people that to tell them, hey, look, I tried it, it didn't work, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. And it's okay. It's okay. I'm there, and to hold space to listen to what they have to say, so that they gain the confidence to move forward.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, there's one last question I ask everybody, and I'm curious as to what you would say is your one tip for other women who are striving to honor their authentic voice in their businesses?
So let's see. That's a good question. So I would say that my one tip is to speak to one person. Think of one person and speak directly to that one person. Don't have to be out there in a TED talk with thousands of people in the room. I'm not giving a commencement speech at a graduation. I'm thinking of one specific person and I am using my voice to talk directly to that person, whether it's an email that I'm writing or whether I'm writing a blog post or a blog or a post for social media, whatever I'm writing, I'm thinking of one specific person and I'm writing to that person. If I substituted the word you, I would type in the word Rachel. And then I'm writing to them. And that's the way I know that I'm having an authentic conversation with that person one-on-one.
It's fabulous. I love it. Thank you so much, Annette, for the tip, for all your wisdom, for sharing your story, and for being here and just sharing the whole journey. I love it. And it's just been such a fun pleasure to chat with you today. So thanks again.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, Rachel, so much for having me. It was great.
If you loved this conversation with Annette and found yourself nodding along to all the messaging magic, then you're going to love what's coming next. Because having the right words is only part of the equation. Your message needs a home, and that's where your lead magnet comes in. The Lead Magnet Lab is the first workshop in my new 30 Days to Done series, and doors open this Thursday. I am so excited to invite you into this 3-hour live experience, which is happening on May 6th, where I will guide you through the exact framework to create a client-attracting freebie that converts. You'll get the strategy, the workbook, and dedicated time to start getting it done, with real support along the way. Over the next 30 days, you'll walk away with a fully functional lead magnet that calls in your best clients and showcases your expertise without sounding salesy or generic. Listen now, spots are limited, so I can fully support every participant. So if this is what your business needs right now, grab your seat. All the details and the sign-up link are waiting for you in the show notes. And I'll see you in the next episode.